In today's video, we're looking at these three people who were killed by venomous snake attacks, from a real estate administrator's fatal shed encounter in Florida to a trail worker's deadly shortcut in Arizona. But first, we begin in Udaipur, India, where a snake whisperer's overconfidence would lead to a horrifying public demonstration of nature's deadly power. It was July 22, 2015, when the ancient city of Udaipur in Rajasthan, India, witnessed one of the most disturbing wildlife performance incidents ever recorded. The outdoor cultural performance ground, nestled between the majestic Aravalli Hills and Lake Pichola, had been transformed into an amphitheater for what was advertised as a traditional entertainment program. What the 200 spectators didn't realize was that they were about to witness an illegal demonstration that would end in tragedy. Drake Morgan, a 48-year-old American who claimed to be a professional snake whisperer, stood backstage preparing for his unauthorized demonstration. Unlike legitimate wildlife educators who maintain safe distances and use proper equipment, Drake had built his reputation on the dangerous claim that he could communicate with serpents through whispered commands and mystical movements. His performances operated in legal gray areas, often arranged through local intermediaries who bypassed official wildlife permits. Drake's controversial methodology centered on what he called serpentine telepathy, the belief that specific vocal frequencies and hand gestures could override a snake's natural defensive instincts. He had developed this technique over 15 years of increasingly risky performances across Southeast Asia, each success reinforcing his dangerous confidence. His social media following eagerly awaited footage of his most extreme demonstrations, creating financial pressure to push boundaries ever further. The American performer had arrived in India specifically seeking to work with the legendary Indian cobra, considered the holy grail among snake whisperers due to its lethal reputation and cultural significance. He had spent months networking through underground wildlife circles, eventually connecting with Rajesh Sharma, a local promoter who specialized in arranging illegal animal performances for foreign entertainers. Drake had arrived in Udaipur 3 days earlier through a network of promoters who specialized in underground wildlife entertainment. The cobra he would use had been captured days earlier from a village, but rather than being properly housed by wildlife authorities, it had been illegally obtained through corrupt local contacts who promised authentic, dangerous animals for foreign performers. This arrangement violated India's Wildlife Protection Act, which strictly prohibits the possession, display, or performance with protected wildlife, especially by foreigners. The event organizers had no proper documentation, relying instead on bribes and the assumption that a remote venue would avoid official scrutiny. The performance was marketed through private WhatsApp groups and word-of-mouth networks, attracting thrill seekers, tourists, and locals curious about the mysterious American snake whisperer. The cobra had been housed in deplorable conditions, a cramped wooden box, fed irregularly, and subjected to constant stress. Wildlife experts would later testify that such treatment would have made the animal extremely unpredictable and aggressive. Security consisted of 2 local men with no wildlife training, armed only with long sticks and a fire extinguisher. The nearest hospital was 45 minutes away by car, and the venue had no emergency medical equipment beyond a basic first aid kit. As the evening program reached its climax, Drake emerged carrying a traditional wicker basket containing the mature Indian cobra. The 5-foot serpent was already agitated from days of improper captivity and transport stress. When Drake began his signature whispered incantations, experienced observers immediately noticed the cobra's fully extended hood and erratic movements, clear signs of extreme distress rather than the calm state Drake claimed to be inducing. Dr. Priya Mehta, a herpetologist from Udaipur University who had attended out of professional curiosity, later testified that the cobra displayed every warning sign of an animal in extreme defensive mode. The hood remained fully spread, the snake was making repeated false strikes, and its body posture indicated maximum agitation, she recalled. Drake, however, interpreted these warning signs as evidence that his technique was working. He announced to the crowd that the cobra was testing his spiritual connection and that the apparent agitation was actually the serpent's way of communicating its readiness to submit to his will. In his final demonstration, Drake made the decision that would prove fatal. Claiming his spiritual connection made protective equipment unnecessary, he approached the cobra and knelt within striking distance. The smartphone footage captured the moment moment when the highly agitated cobra, perceiving the close approach as a direct threat, struck with lightning speed. The cobra's fangs penetrated deep into Drake's exposed left ankle, delivering a substantial dose of neurotoxic venom. As Drake recoiled in shock, the chaos of the moment caused the cobra to make a second defensive movement, though this strike missed as handlers finally rushed to intervene. The Indian cobra's neurotoxic venom began its deadly work immediately. Within 10 to 15 minutes, Drake began showing the first signs of envenomation: ptosis, drooping eyelids, difficulty swallowing, and slurred speech. His desperate whispered commands to the cobra became increasingly garbled as the neurotoxins attacked the connections between his nerves and muscles. Over the next hour, as emergency responders struggled to transport him to the nearest hospital, Drake's condition steadily deteriorated. The progressive paralysis spread from the bite site throughout his body. His breathing became increasingly labored as the venom attacked his respiratory muscles. Despite reaching the hospital, the delay in receiving proper antivenom and the lack of immediate mechanical ventilation proved fatal. Drake died approximately 3 hours after the bite from respiratory failure. The medical team at Maharana Bhupal Government Hospital fought desperately to save Drake's life, but the combination of delayed treatment and the substantial venom load proved insurmountable. Dr. Vikram Singh, the emergency physician who treated Drake, explained that cobra bite victims require immediate antivenom and often mechanical ventilation to survive. Every minute of delay significantly reduces survival chances, he emphasized. The incident prompted an immediate crackdown by wildlife authorities, who arrested several local intermediaries involved in the illegal wildlife trade. The cultural venue was shut down pending investigation, and stricter enforcement of wildlife protection laws was implemented across Rajasthan. Multiple arrests followed as authorities traced the network of corruption that had enabled the illegal performance. Rajesh Sharma was sentenced to 3 years in prison for wildlife trafficking and culpable homicide. The incident sparked nationwide discussions about the exploitation of wildlife for entertainment and led to enhanced penalties for violations of the Wildlife Protection Act. Drake Morgan's death exposed the dangerous myth that venomous snakes could be controlled through mystical means, while highlighting the ongoing problem of illegal wildlife exploitation in India's underground entertainment industry. While Drake Morgan's story ended in the cultural heart of India, another tale of human-wildlife conflict was unfolding thousands of miles away in Florida, where a routine household task would soon turn deadly for Nina Vance. It was April 22, 2015, when the suburban outskirts of Tampa, Florida, became the scene of a deadly encounter that would highlight the growing conflict between urban development and wildlife habitats. The Vance family property, located in a quiet residential neighborhood that bordered undeveloped wetlands, featured a modest ranch-style home surrounded by mature oak trees and native Florida vegetation. Nina Vance, a 41-year-old real estate administrator, had lived on the property for over 8 years with her husband Mark and their teenage son Tyler. Known for her practical nature and self-reliant approach to household management, Nina took pride in maintaining their property without relying on outside help. She handled everything from landscaping to minor repairs, viewing these tasks as both therapeutic and economically sensible. Nina had been managing undiagnosed hypertension for months, attributing her occasional dizziness and fatigue to work stress. Her reluctance to seek medical attention would prove to be a critical factor in the events that followed. Recent months had brought significant changes to the area surrounding the Vance property. A major residential development project had begun construction just half a mile away, involving the clearing of over 200 acres of natural habitat. The construction activities had displaced numerous wildlife species, forcing them to seek new territories and shelter. Local residents had reported increased sightings of raccoons, opossums, and various reptiles in their yards. Nina had noticed these changes herself, observing more frequent animal tracks around her property and discovering evidence of creatures taking shelter in various outbuildings. Despite these signs, she maintained her routine of outdoor maintenance work, confident in her ability to handle any situations that might arise. On this particular evening, she had planned to retrieve her gardening tools from the backyard storage shed. The eastern diamondback rattlesnake represents the largest and most dangerous venomous serpent in North America, capable of reaching lengths of up to 8 feet and weighing over 10 pounds. These formidable predators are native to the southeastern United States, with Florida hosting one of the largest populations. What makes makes the eastern diamondback particularly dangerous is its potent hemotoxic venom, which attacks blood cells, blood vessels, and tissue at the cellular level. A single bite can deliver a large volume of hemotoxic venom, with severe envenomation capable of causing life-threatening tissue destruction and systemic failure. These serpents seek shelter in dark, enclosed spaces, making storage sheds attractive hiding spots. As the sun began to set on April 22nd, Nina made her way across the backyard toward the wooden storage shed that housed her gardening equipment. Nina approached the shed with her usual confidence, keys in hand, and focused on the task ahead. The interior of the shed was dimly lit, with only the fading daylight from the doorway providing illumination. She opened the door and stepped inside, immediately blocking much of the available light with her body. Without pausing to allow her eyes to adjust or to check for any signs of animal presence, Nina moved directly toward the back corner where her gardening tools were stored. The eastern diamondback rattlesnake had taken refuge in the shed earlier that day, seeking cool shelter from the warm afternoon temperatures. The serpent had coiled itself behind a stack of clay flower pots in the exact corner where Nina stored her equipment. The snake, measuring approximately 6 feet in length, had been resting peacefully until the sudden intrusion disrupted its sanctuary. As Nina bent down and reached behind the stacked pots to retrieve her tools, her hand came within inches of the concealed rattlesnake. The serpent, startled by the sudden movement and unable to retreat further into the confined space, perceived the approaching hand as an immediate threat. The snake struck defensively before producing an audible warning rattle. The massive eastern diamondback delivered an unusually large venom yield directly into the vascular-rich tissue between Nina's thumb and index finger, a defensive bite that injected a large venom load. The strike occurred so quickly that Nina barely registered what had happened before the snake's venom delivery system activated. The serpent then immediately withdrew deeper into the shed's recesses. The bite wounds began bleeding profusely as the venom's anticoagulant properties prevented normal blood clotting. Nina instinctively pulled her hand back and exited the shed, examining the 2 distinct puncture wounds. Within minutes, intense burning pain radiated up her arm as the venom began its destructive work on the surrounding tissue. The hemotoxic compounds immediately started breaking down blood cells and attacking blood vessel walls, causing rapid swelling and discoloration around the bite site. Initially planning to drive to the nearby urgent care facility, Nina quickly realized the severity of her condition as intense pain and swelling progressed rapidly. She redirected toward Tampa General's emergency department, knowing they would have the specialized treatment she needed. As Nina drove toward the hospital, the venom continued its relentless assault on her body's systems. The hemotoxic compounds caused widespread vascular injury and coagulation failure. Her hand and forearm swelled dramatically, while intense pain spread up her arm. During the first 20 minutes of her drive, Nina experienced escalating symptoms. Nausea overwhelmed her as the venom began affecting her cardiovascular system. Her pre-existing hypertension, combined with the massive venom load, created cardiovascular instability. Approximately 60 minutes after the bite, Nina's blood pressure dropped precipitously as damaged blood vessels lost their ability to maintain proper circulation. After 35 minutes of driving, Nina lost consciousness behind the wheel, her vehicle veering off the road and coming to rest in a roadside ditch. Passing motorists discovered her unconscious form and immediately contacted emergency services. Emergency responders transported Nina to Tampa General's emergency department, where trauma specialists immediately began aggressive treatment. Despite immediate anti-venom administration and advanced medical intervention, the prolonged delay and massive venom load had already triggered severe complications. Nina developed acute coagulopathy, with her blood losing its ability to clot properly. Internal bleeding began in multiple organ systems, while compartment syndrome developed in her bitten arm. The medical team fought for 6 hours to stabilize Nina's condition, administering multiple vials of antivenom, blood products, and vasopressor medications. However, the combination of her pre-existing hypertension, the unusually large large venom yield and the 35-minute delay in treatment had caused irreversible damage. Nina Vance succumbed to her injuries at 2:47 a.m. on April 23, 2015, approximately 8 hours after the initial snakebite. The cause of death was listed as cardiovascular collapse secondary to severe envenomation, complicated by coagulopathy and multi-organ failure. The incident prompted an immediate investigation by local wildlife authorities. Officials discovered that the recent construction activities had displaced numerous reptile species into residential areas. While Nina Vance's story ended in the suburban landscapes of Florida, another tale of human-wildlife conflict was unfolding in the rugged mountains of Arizona. It was July 2, 2017, when the rugged terrain of the Santa Catalina Mountains in Arizona became the setting for a fatal encounter that would underscore the inherent dangers faced by those who work in remote wilderness areas. Blair Sutton, a 41-year-old trail maintenance contractor, had been working the summer season in the Santa Catalina Mountains for over 6 years. His job involved maintaining hiking trails, clearing debris, and ensuring safe passage for visitors. Blair was known among his colleagues for his efficiency and practical approach to his work, often taking shortcuts between designated work zones to maximize productivity. Recent years had brought noticeable changes to Blair's physical condition. His stamina had decreased, and he experienced occasional fatigue during long workdays in the mountain terrain. Blair attributed these symptoms to the natural effects of aging and the physical demands of his outdoor profession. Unknown to him, these symptoms indicated chronic kidney disease that had been progressing for several years, a condition that would prove critical in the events that followed. The summer of 2017 had been particularly challenging for trail workers. Arizona's monsoon season had arrived early and brought increased wildlife activity. The combination of higher humidity and sporadic rainfall created ideal conditions for reptiles to become more active. Local park rangers had issued multiple warnings about increased snake sightings along popular trails. Blair had been assigned to work on a section connecting 2 popular hiking areas, requiring him to traverse approximately 3 miles of challenging terrain. His supervisor had reminded him to stay on designated paths, but Blair's experience and confidence often led him to take more direct routes. The black-tailed rattlesnake, scientifically known as Crotalus molossus, represents a medically significant venomous species commonly found in the mountainous regions of the American Southwest. While generally less aggressive than some rattlesnake species, the black-tailed rattlesnake possesses medically significant hemotoxic venom containing enzymes and proteins designed to break down tissue and disrupt blood clotting. The venom causes progressive tissue destruction and severe swelling, and while rarely fatal, with prompt treatment, can lead to life-threatening complications including shock and severe dehydration in remote wilderness situations. These serpents are ambush predators that rely heavily on their exceptional camouflage to remain undetected. Their coloration blends perfectly with the rocky surfaces and shadows found throughout their mountainous habitat. The species often seeks shelter beneath rock ledges during the heat of the day. As Blair worked through his assigned section on the afternoon of July 2nd, he encountered a particularly challenging area where recent storm damage had created significant obstacles. Rather than following the circuitous official route around the damaged area, Blair made the decision to cut directly across a steep rocky slope at approximately 2:30 p.m. The rocky terrain in this remote section blocked all cell phone signals. Blair's radio had limited range, and his location was over 2 miles from the nearest maintained trail where other workers might pass. The isolation that made this area pristine also made it extraordinarily dangerous for anyone facing a medical emergency. As Blair carefully picked his way across the rocky slope, his focus was primarily on maintaining his footing on the loose terrain. The excellent camouflage provided by the rocky environment meant that he failed to notice the black-tailed rattlesnake that had taken shelter beneath a large rock ledge directly in his path. The snake, measuring approximately 4 feet in length, had positioned itself in the cool shade beneath the ledge to escape the mounting afternoon heat. As Blair stepped closer to the ledge, his movement caused loose rocks to tumble down the slope, alerting the snake to the approaching threat. Cornered beneath the rock ledge with no escape route, the startled black-tailed rattlesnake struck defensively without the typical warning rattle that might have alerted Blair to its presence. The serpent's fangs, measuring approximately half an inch, found their mark at the boot collar, where leather met fabric, penetrating the thin material and delivering venom into the soft tissue above his ankle. The initial bite lasted approximately 2 seconds, delivering a substantial envenomation. The venom immediately began its destructive work, attacking blood cells and blood vessel walls, while preventing normal clotting mechanisms from functioning properly. The snake quickly withdrew and disappeared into the rocky crevices. Blair immediately felt intense burning pain radiating from the bite site as the venom began breaking down tissue at the cellular level. Within the first hour, his ankle began to swell dramatically, and the characteristic dual puncture wounds became clearly visible. The hemotoxic venom caused progressive tissue destruction around the bite site, leading to severe bruising and discoloration that spread up his leg. Despite the severity of his situation, Blair attempted to make his way toward the main trail where he could seek help. However, this decision proved critical in accelerating the spread of venom throughout his system. The physical exertion of walking across difficult terrain, combined with elevated heart rate caused by pain and stress, increased his circulation and caused the venom to spread more rapidly. By 4 p.m., approximately 1.5 hours after the bite, Blair began experiencing systemic symptoms as the venom reached his vital organs. The hemotoxic compounds caused widespread damage to blood vessels throughout his leg, leading to massive swelling and fluid accumulation. His leg swelled dramatically as compartment syndrome developed, dangerous pressure building within the confined space of his lower leg. The venom's assault on his muscle tissue released large amounts of proteins into his bloodstream. Combined with his pre-existing kidney disease, his compromised kidneys struggled to filter the toxic breakdown products. Blair experienced severe nausea and dizziness as his body struggled to cope with the massive tissue damage and the toxic load circulating through his system. By 6 p.m., nearly 4 hours after the initial bite, the combination of massive fluid loss into damaged tissues, severe dehydration from the desert heat, and the stress on his already compromised kidneys began causing severe shock. His blood pressure dropped significantly as his cardiovascular system struggled to maintain circulation while dealing with massive internal fluid shifts and dehydration. Blair's attempts to reach help became increasingly desperate as his strength failed. The remote location meant that even if he had managed to activate his radio, rescue teams would have faced significant challenges reaching his position before dark. As the desert night fell and temperatures dropped, Blair's condition continued to deteriorate. The combination of severe dehydration, massive fluid loss into damaged tissues, and the overwhelming stress on his compromised kidney function created a cascade of life-threatening complications. By midnight, approximately 9.5 hours after the initial envenomation, Blair collapsed in a rocky ravine, still over a mile from the main trail. Blair succumbed to complications from untreated envenomation during the early morning hours of July 3rd, approximately 14 hours after the initial bite. The primary cause of death was severe shock from dehydration and massive fluid loss into damaged tissues, compounded by his pre-existing kidney disease, which prevented his body from properly managing the toxic breakdown products from muscle damage. Blair's body was discovered the following morning by a search team, dispatched when he failed to return to the ranger station. The investigation revealed that he had deviated from the designated trail system, taking a shortcut across terrain known to harbor venomous snakes during peak activity periods. His death prompted immediate changes to safety protocols for trail maintenance workers, including mandatory GPS tracking devices, improved communication equipment, and revised procedures prohibiting solo work in remote areas during the summer months when snake activity peaks. Thanks for watching. Want to see more? Click on your screen now.